Silversmithing. I think what appeals to me about silver is it always kind of reminds me of the moon, you know? It's like moonlight in metal form. So I've always had kind of an affinity for metals. I always like working with my hands. In that time, I had some jobs that required like soldering, brazing, things like that. So I learned the torch. And I don't know, I've always loved silver. There's something about it that's cool. It changes as you wear it, you know? It becomes reflective of its own journey. Fortunate Wanderer started as a hobby, man. I was on the soap back in the day and was still, it felt kind of strange, you know? I'd never really thought the acting thing was gonna work. What if we had this? I am spitballing a layout here from a compositional standpoint to see if this looks like something I want to make. Now I'm working in a major studio and I got my name on a dressing room and I have an assigned parking place and like all this stuff. It felt really strange and it was fun and it was an adventure, but I missed working with my hands, you know? I grew up doing labor stuff. I like this one. This one reminds me of the ocean a little bit. I mean, they all remind me of the ocean a little bit, but this one's speaking to me. So this is the one that we're gonna use. And it's kind of big. So we're gonna make a cuff. Because if it was a necklace and you turned your head too fast, break your neck. Everybody else on the show was kind of picking up hobbies, you know, creative outlets. The gals were like knitting and stuff. And I need a hobby, I need a thing. I need a thing that I can do. And so I just kind of started making things. I always like to fill in these spaces, these really big, wide solder joints with something that kind of fills the space. It adds a level of sophistication to it. So we got some forming work to do. Let's do that. So, next part is the fun part. Well, the start of the fun part, fire, right? Which is annealing. So you heard me talking about how we have some alignment issues with our metal. Annealing softens the metal using fire. So I'm gonna get this metal pretty close to red hot. Sometimes I get lucky and when it gets hot like this and it's soft, it just kind of lays flat on its own. So this one's pretty much annealed. You can see the color bloom and the metal starts to get kind of weird. Ta-da! Now you've got annealed silver. It looks like we're going to end up doing a lot of the same thing, but I promise there's a method to my madness. I'm not classically trained. I didn't go to Juilliard. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But yeah, I don't know. I just felt like I was flying by the seat of my pants and having something else that was more in line with what I was used to, like something that where I worked with my hands. Okay. I'm gonna do the best I can to do this in a fashion that we can all follow. But once I've got the torch on, we're marrying a really thin piece of metal with two really thick pieces of metal, and they have very different melting points. And so I have to really kind of focus on this thing here. But felt prudent, you know, to have on standby, which is good, man, because, you know, the past few years or so have been sort of dodgy, touch and go. So it was good to have something to support myself and my family. And it's fun, you know, now we've obviously graduated from making woven bracelets and stuff like that. And I got all these stones and all these fun tools and all this, like now it feels like science. Anyway, that's called quenching. Put it in a pickle pot. Ta-da, and now safe to touch. Put it on our little towel, clean it up, ta-da, and hey, that looks pretty good. Nice and clean. Cool. So now we're gonna do it again with more layers, and because I'm gonna be adding stuff, gotta clean it again. We got chemicals and sanders and pressurized explosive gas and a bunch of torches and like saws and drills and yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a trip. When I start soldering, I'm gonna try and fuse this at the end, just to make sure that this joint here at one end of this little composition is perfect, and then we kind of work our way down the end. As I'm working the heat down the other end of the piece, I might have to manipulate the pieces, press on them, stuff like that, to make sure that everything's nice and flat. It's just part of the process. But the idea is to make sure that all the lines are perfectly parallel and that they're flush on the bottom as well, nice and perfectly flat, because this is kind of the central band, and if we start accepting mistakes in the middle here, they're just going to translate into all the layers that we build outwards. So we got to make sure we get this one right. Getting there. There we go. That's kind of triangle shaped, right? So the name Fortunate Wanderer really came from like a weird little moment of inspiration. I don't know. I was traveling quite a bit more at the time, and I've always had this feeling when I travel about like how lucky I am to get to do stuff like that, you know, to get out into the world and to experience new stuff and new places. Perfect. And even though this is kind of jacked up right now, it's okay. I just needed these ends to marry and to know that the grand total of this, the perimeter of this, is sufficient to wrap there. I can doctor the shape up a little bit in a minute. These travels will find their way into my work, and then there would be these, like, you know, physical manifestations of adventures I've had. Except now. So yeah, I'm happy kind of with where things are right now, and I'm happy with kind of where things are going. So that's good. Not the cleanest job ever, but it'll do. The joint's good, and we can make up for hippie as that might sound. I don't know, it's cool. And you know, there's other white metals, you know, there's white gold, there's platinum, there's stuff like that, and they're often selected because those metals don't tarnish. I like silver. There's something about it. It changes as you wear it, you know. It becomes reflective of the time that you guys have spent together. It changes on its own. It becomes reflective of its own journey. There's just something about it. So, bracelet mandrel. We're gonna go like this. And it goes really well with all of my favorite color schemes. It matches well with like earth tones. It matches really well with these like oceanic stones that I've got sometimes that are just kind of like, but I like it very much. I did learn stuff, because that's how you learn. I think you learn a lot more from things you've done wrong than things you've done right. And there was something therapeutic about like giving yourself permission to do that, you know. It was okay, it was all right. Almost everything that appeals to me in stones reminds me of something oceanic. I don't know, they all remind me of the ocean in some way, shape, or form. Everything in my work just makes me think of nature. It's all nature. Nature's always been my muse. When I look at them, remind me of the ocean in some way, shape, or form. A stretch of coast that I saw. Motorcycling is fun. I love bikes and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know, they all remind me of something in nature, you know? Such a strange thing, because your brain knows that color. I'm trying to find a way to bring an element of it into something wearable, you know, that can join you on your journeys. I've got a graveyard of things that just didn't hit, you know. But yeah, you know, over the years, that graveyard has grown, but so has my bag of tricks. I've learned a bunch of stuff from that, you know. And because this was an artistic venture from the get-go, I was able to give myself permission to just make bad art and make mistakes. I think you learn a lot more from things you've done wrong than things you've done right. And there was something therapeutic about like giving yourself permission to do that, you know. It was okay, it was all right. And each subsequent piece gets a little bit better, you know, you gain a little bit of experience and you learn a few things. You learn how to be creative, but you also learn how to be restorative as well. You know, I think it's important to be able to fix your hiccups. It's an exploratory venture for yourself as well. You learn things about yourself, you know, like about your work ethic and your pain tolerance. You watch these long enough, you're gonna watch me melt skin and sand my fingerprints off, and, you know, and it teaches you stuff about yourself. You know, it teaches you to take pride in your work. There are mistakes that I'm sure that I could leave in pieces that nobody would know was even there except me, but I'll know. Come on. Last little shine before we try and find it a home. This cloth stuff, man, this is magic. I don't know how it works. I just know it works. We're done. I can exhale. It's done. It exists. We worked enough today. I'm gonna go for a surf. It's done, and it's important to have good work-life balance. So I hear that there might be a little motion in the ocean. Hurricane Narnar gonna drum up some water from the south.
The National Weather Service in Los Angeles, Oxnard, has issued a flash flood warning for East Central Ventura County in southwestern California. High surf advisory for the Catalina and Santa Barbara Islands, Los Angeles County coast hazards. Dangerous rip currents and larger breaking waves are expected through at least Wednesday evening. There is an increased risk for ocean drowning. A beach hazard statement is issued when threats such as sneaker waves and other hazards create life-threatening conditions in the surf zone.